Greetings adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. A lot of people enjoy tabletop games for different reasons. When someone finally snaps at the game table, chances are that they weren't having fun at the table a long time ago. While I'd like to think that most tables can manage to keep a bunch of players with very different motivations happy all at once, the truth is that sometimes one player will try their hardest to suck up all the fun in the room. If it isn't addressed, eventually someone's going to get mad. I feel especially bad when the game master is the one that snaps, because a lot of the time they're the only ones trying to keep everyone happy, spending hours of their time every week before the session to make sure everyone gets a cool moment or two. When you constantly derail every plot point the Dungeon Master sets up, you're going to miss out on scenarios that were crafted specifically for you. So whenever you see that the Dungeon Master is steering you in a certain direction, you can approach it your way but still give it an honest try. A little chaos can be fun, and the Dungeon Master might even thrive on making a few things up on the fly, but there is definitely going to be diminishing returns if the Dungeon Master has to come up with a new idea every 10 minutes. Eventually, they'll decide that killing your character is the easiest way to continue the session, and sometimes you can't really blame them. Today's treasure is written by a Dungeon Master and goes by the name I Finally Snapped at My Player. Okay, so this is a horror story, but I think it all befalls me, the Game Master, because of this situation. Yesterday, I had a Pathfinder 2nd edition session, which has been running for about 8 months. I will spare the specifics of the story, because that is not where the issue lies. The party comprises of a half-orc barbarian, a goblin monk, a tengu sorcerer, a catfolk oracle/sorcerer, and an elf ranger. The elf ranger is played by one of my best friends, who is well known for just trying to be random and cringe at the same time. His character, who is allegedly neutral good, has so far threatened to kill several NPCs, shot first and asked questions later, burned down half a forest, and is just never paying attention as a player. Here's an example. The room before you has a bunch of bodies littered on the right side of the room. Blood from the bodies has dried up on the cobblestone. The other half of the room has a bunch of boxes which appear to have tools stacked on top of them. The ranger says, "I want to inspect what is inside the boxes and what is on top of them." Me, you inspect the boxes and find that there are various tools here, some of them covered in blood. Clearly the tools have been used to cause harm to living creatures. Monk, I want to inspect the corpses laying in the room's corner to see if I can identify a cause of death and maybe get a hint of how long it's been since they were murdered. Me, alright cool, you succeeded in your medicine check. Even though you are not trained in medicine, I will say that you deem it to be at least a few days since the people were murdered. Ranger, I want to inspect inside the boxes. Me, you already did. This is an occurrence that happens way too often. Last session, the party walked inside a dungeon where they stumbled upon a friendly creature that appeared like a distorted version of each party member. For example, if you were the ranger and looked at it, it looked like the ranger. If the barbarian looked at it, it looked like the barbarian. It was friendly though, and was intent on helping the party with their being stuck inside a dungeon situation. It was having a conversation, trying to explain what it was in riddles to one of the party members when the elf ranger just said, "Let's kill it." The party ignores the ranger like they always do. However, this time, I have had it. The constant interjection, even though the ranger has been told several times to stop, interjecting and interrupting other people's role-playing finally got to me. I had the NPC say, "What do you mean kill me? You come into my house and I show you hospitality, and you suddenly tell your people to kill me." The ranger replies, "You freak me out, man." The NPC says, "So you just go around and try to murder people or creatures that creep you out? I will have none of this. I will consume your very being and teach you a lesson in humility." You know, as much as I agree with the constant interruptions being annoying, that last line makes it sound like a sophisticated villain monologue. That would totally validate any fears that my party would have. The example of inspecting the toolbox is a great example though of someone who isn't really paying attention but still always wants to be the focus of the story. Early on when I was a Dungeon Master, I would run into players who would totally do that, where they would just cut people off mid-sentence and try to roll and then instantly have me respond to that roll. The best way to put them in their place is to simply ignore the in-game mechanics, because this is an out-of-game problem. If you acknowledge the roll that they made at the table, give them a result, and then try to quickly go back to the other player, they're they're just going to totally do it again. As much as it sucks to basically shut down the campaign to say, hey buddy, we're not doing this right now, the monk was talking, let's go back to what he was saying, I do find it interesting here that you point out that the party normally just ignores his interjections. So clearly they're already on the same page as you. Early on you do describe them as one of your best friends, so this is someone that hopefully you can just talk to honestly. And if they crash out over D&D and want to ruin your relationship, I feel like that's a reflection on them more than it is on you. At a certain point, he has to respect that everyone at the table came to play D&D. So honestly, it does sound like this conversation is long overdue. But as we'll see in a moment here, he's going to use an in-game solution to try to stop the interjections, and it's really not going to work out. I pulled up some high NPC stat block, and a fight was had. The NPC was only attacking the ranger. The other party members tried to strike at it, but they missed. The ranger ran into a portal that was on the right-hand side of the room. One problem, the creature controlled the portals. So the creature sent him to a room with a giant tentacle monster, and he had to fight that creature all by himself. All the party members except for one went inside the portal and faced off against the tentacle monster. The monk stayed behind and spoke to the creature, trying to get it to calm down. The creature said, I harbor no ill will against you or the rest of your compatriots, except for that elf. He may not enter my room without me killing him. There is no way you can persuade me. There is also one more issue. The only way out of that room he's in right now is through my room. The monk pleaded for his ally's life as the rest of the party fought the giant tentacle monster in the other room. The creature finally subsided with a social check. They used persuasion. At first, the monk rolled a natural 1, then used a hero point, so the second roll was a 6. I had the creature ponder for a short while and said that it would let the elf pass the room if it could have his soul. When he dies, he is not to be taken to the plane of his deity and live out the afterlife with his god. He is to spend all eternity with the creature. If that does not suit him, the creature can kill him now, and he will spend all of eternity inside his god's realm. The creature also pointed out not to try to swindle him, since he knows and sees all inside this place. This showed that the creature was more than it appeared to be. The monk said he would relay this information to the elf and went through the portal. A long battle was had against the tentacle creature, but they came out victorious. When they entered the portal, the creature had changed its appearance. It turns out that the creature itself was the Grim Reaper, who just likes to hang out in that room of the dungeon from time to time. I have read a lot of Discworld lately, so I wanted to implement deaths somehow into the campaign. I'm the game master, so I can do almost anything I want, or at least that is how I deem it to be. Yeah, I get that you're the game master and everything you say technically goes, but this really is an awful solution. Honestly, at first, I didn't mind that he was sent through the portal and had to fight a tentacle monster. That can be a funny moment, the party gets some free XP. Afterwards, this guy could have calmed down maybe and they could return to their dialogue. That isn't the best way to correct the ranger's behavior of interjecting, but it is a funny way to establish that this guy is a high-level NPC that shouldn't be mocked. So inadvertently, you punish the monk as well because he tried to be diplomatic, he tried to talk this creature down, and instead of rewarding the monk for good roleplay, you come up with the solution that, you know what, he doesn't have to die now, but he does have to be damned eventually. So although the monk saves the ranger from dying immediately, he doesn't really save him in the long run. So your in-game punishment has now affected 2 people. If the ranger is being annoying because he's cutting people off, that is an out-of-game problem. A powerful NPC isn't going to get him to shut up, especially since now the guy's already damned to an eternity of torture. The ranger isn't going to really be on his best behavior because there's no upside for him to do it now in-game, you know? One of the problems when you have to constantly improv new solutions to problems is eventually you get a stinker like this. I don't know why the Grim Reaper would be in this random room taking the form of other people waiting to get pissed off, but clearly when you started this interaction, that wasn't the plan you had in mind. I'm really curious what you originally planned for this NPC before you completely derailed your own story to get a one-up on the ranger, because I really do think you've robbed yourself of a good story in addition to robbing the monk of good diplomacy. But this story still has a little bit left. Let's see if he recovers it. The party was surprised, to say the very least. The elf tried to apologize several times, but Def was not having it. The elf tried to strike another bargain with Def, but all Def said was, "You are in no position to bargain with me. I hold all the cards, and to be frank, I dislike you. I have seen how you've acted throughout your life, and you have made my job rather hard. A lot of lives have ended prematurely because of your murder-happy personality. You come into my room, or what I deem to be my home at this current time, and tell your party members to kill me, when I have shown you nothing but hospitality. It is time you finally face the consequences of your actions." The elf finally gave up, and Def brought out a contract for him to sign. The contract covered all loopholes, basically damning his soul to forever be denied its place in paradise. dice. The section included is borrowed from Lost Omens Legends. No limitations, right of first refusal, nothing set forth in this agreement, including without limitation, the receipt of death services under this agreement shall a. limit death's party's ability to make any similar arrangements set forth in this agreement to any other mortal or immortal parties, including but not limited to any adversaries to the mortal party, or b. prevent the mortal party from entering any other agreement, whether similar to this agreement or otherwise, with any other agent or representative of any juridical bureaucracy, an other death agreement provided. However, that no such other death agreement may involve the sale, lease, or forfeiture or other use of the mortal party's immortal soul without first providing the death party a right of first refusal to provide a similar contractual service upon reasonable and equitable terms, or c. create obligations binding in any way of the judicial bureaucracy of death the ability to utilize any fiendish, necrotic, deathly entity or fully corrupted mortal soul for any purpose for durations determined entirely by the judicial bureaucracy of death in its sole discretion. Yeah, there's no chance the ranger read any of that. I barely wanted to read it. The contract was signed. The elf's soul is eternally damned to be with death for all eternity once his time comes to a close. The party was righteously angry with the elf and the player as well, because his stupid attitude just took up 3 hours of the session because he had to go out spouting dumb stuff, and I finally snapped. I think I overreacted a bit, but after 8 months of him doing stupid stuff like this, even though the party and I have had talks with him about his behavior always derailing everything, I think that it is only understandable I snapped. That'll be all. And he ends with a smiley face. I do think that it is important context that you guys have tried to have these conversations in the past and he's been doing this stuff for 8 months, but I don't get why you're proud of this whole death contract. Like I said, it's really a stupid way to introduce death if that's something that you're trying to do in this campaign. The contract is also super boring and dry. I mean, you're the game master. You don't need an airtight contract with no loopholes. You just need to tell the guy to shut up and his soul has been damned for eternity. You don't need paperwork for that, man. And you even admit that you borrowed it from something else, so it's not even like clever that you came up with this contract with no loopholes. If this guy is so bad he doesn't respect anyone else's time, just kick him from the party. You derailed your campaign for 3 full hours instead of telling him to shut up, so I don't get why you're so proud of this moment. It is understandable that you snapped. I just really don't get why you're happy that as the game master you were able to smite the guy, because newsflash, if you're the game master you can smite anyone at any moment. You are effectively the god of the world. There's no shortage of in-game consequences you can dish out, but that doesn't stop the main problem that he's interjecting. Even if his character's dead, he can still interject because he's a person sitting at the table. If he truly cannot stop interjecting while at the table, the solution unfortunately is to remove him from the table. If he does this more sessions than he doesn't, and you keep having these 3-hour detours to punish him in game, only you and the rest of the party suffer here. There's a reason I say on this channel, in-game solutions don't solve out-of-game problems, and it's for scenarios exactly like this. I feel sorry that you snapped. I feel sorry that the entire party has gotten to the point where they just ignore when the ranger talks, and I'm sorry this ranger won't shut up. I'd love to hear what everyone's thoughts on this story is. I really hate when the story doesn't have a clear resolution. I hope the elf ranger gets better, but I have no reason to believe that he will. We'll have to see if there's ever an update to this story. And as always, make sure to like and hype the video as it really helps our channel grow, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, I hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now. I wanted to give D&D Dice a shout out, my favorite dice shop and where half of my paycheck goes to every month. They've got a lot of options, including their original 11-piece dice sets that they call the King of Crits series. Be sure to use the code LootGoblin to support the channel at dnddice.com, or you can just click the link down in that video description and it'll be added when you check out with your favorite dice. As an edgelord myself, my favorite collections are the Plague Doctor and Blood Hunter 11-piece sets, which I use alongside their Tomb of the Lich dice tower. Anyways, back to the video.